Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today is the International Day for People of African Descent. It's one of these United Nations celebrations. It says here it's a holiday, but well, I'm working, so are you probably, so I'm not sure we can call it a holiday exactly. But it says here it's to celebrate the African diaspora and the contribution of Africa and Africans to the arts. Now, those of you who listen to this podcast regularly, you'll know that a few weeks ago I was talking about Africa and how I tried to learn a little bit more about it because we don't get to hear African news. It's kind of hidden from us. So maybe today is a good day for you to explore a little bit more about Africa, African music, African culture. I mean, to be honest with you, it's very hard to generalize. Africa's a huge place with loads of different communities in it. There's North Africa, which is Islamic and Arabic speaking, and then there's South Africa. The place is huge. So I'm not sure how they can pull together common themes to declare a day. Anyway, today is the day to celebrate diverse African heritage. I'm sure that I read somewhere a few years ago that we're all descended from Africans. I don't know who came up with that idea, but I'm sure there were some scientists who were saying that we all share African genealogy. I could be wrong, but anyway, it says here to celebrate, you should visit museums and memorials, check out African musicians. Oh, now that's an interesting one. I'm very sad to say that I don't even know one African musician. Isn't that awful? Yeah, I did Google them before I started to record this, and looking through the list, I don't recognize any of them. I mean, of course, there's loads of black people who are musicians, but I don't necessarily think that they're all African. They could be Afro-Caribbean, maybe, or maybe just Caribbean. I don't know. But there's a list here of African musicians: Miriam Makeba, Salif Keita, Ladysmith Black Mambazo. I mean, sorry. I really am very sad that I don't know any of these. I know that it must be about 20 years ago now, I went on holiday to Belgium. And I was sitting in this lovely hotel in Belgium, or maybe it was the Netherlands. Anyway, I was in the Netherlands or Belgium. And I was sitting in reception of this hotel drinking a coffee. And 3 or 4 Africans appeared. They were waiting to go to a gig, a musical gig. And they were playing. It was a musical group. And the man started a conversation with me. And he said that he was very famous in Gambia. He said he's known as King Kora, or King of the Kora. Now, I'd never even heard of the kora. It's a traditional African musical instrument. But anyway, he was telling me a little bit more about his musical career. And I haven't thought of him until a few moments ago, getting ready for this podcast. His name is actually Jaliba Kuyate. He was a very interesting person, and I'm just seeing him on YouTube here. He is actually quite famous. So I suppose I have met one African musician. Interesting, isn't it? But anyway, this is the day when we're supposed to celebrate all things related to Africa. Now, usually on these UN holidays, they tell us things like visit museums and memorials, check out African artists, read about history. It's interesting, and I say that because in this particular page I'm looking at today, it doesn't say invite your African neighbors for dinner. Usually, that's the first thing it says. It says, let's celebrate, for example, American Day. And then it says, find an American and invite them. But here, it doesn't say that at all. It would be a little bit strange for me to start talking to my African neighbors because it's an African celebration day. But it's a little bit odd that they're not suggesting we make friends with Africans. Anyway, apparently, this day is very, very important for exploring the rich cultural heritage of Africa. It was the birthplace of humanity. That's what I was talking about a moment ago. Early humans are believed to have emerged 2 million years ago. Oh, interesting. Well, it's always another day to celebrate, isn't it? And by the way, speaking of humans emerging, this is also Cameron Diaz's birthday. Yeah, you remember her. She was in that movie, The Mask. There's something about Mary as well, being John Malkovich, Gangs of New York. She was in Charlie's Angels, the remake. So yeah, if you're not really into celebrating African things, you can also celebrate, or alternatively celebrate, Cameron Diaz's birthday. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Apparently, she's 50. Oh, really? Is this her 50th, is it? Oh, interesting. I thought she would be older than that. Yeah, very interesting. It says here she's 51, actually. Yeah, she's a year younger than I am. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, so if you're not really into the whole African thing, maybe you can just go and watch a movie with Cameron Diaz. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yesterday in my podcast, I was talking about intonation and how important it is. And it really is very, very important that you use intonation. And if you think of Martin Luther King, you remember the American civil rights leader. He gave that really passionate speech, I have a dream. And he goes on to say how, white and black people will have the same rights. But can you imagine if he said that without intonation? Can you imagine if he just went to the microphone and said, yeah, I had a dream that we'd all be equal one day? Do you think that would have had the same impact? Well, of course, no, it wouldn't. And so just to continue on from my podcast of yesterday, that really highlights just how important intonation is. Now, I'm not saying that you need to, sound like a Shakespearean actor the next time you're in the coffee shop. I would like a latte, please. It's not like that, but it's just remembering that intonation is incredibly powerful and you really need to be using it. It's one of these things which you could overlook because, as I mentioned yesterday, most English teachers are so hung up on things like grammar that they forget things like basic communication, how we interact with each other. I mean, when I go out with my friends to the coffee shop or to the pub or wherever, we don't sit around and talk about grammar. I don't say, oh, I used a great conditional yesterday. And my friend, he doesn't say, Oh, I just really heard a great example of the passive voice from the barista. It is not the kind of conversations we have. We don't think about grammar. It doesn't even come to our minds. However, if someone used flat intonation, if I went to talk to my friend and I said, "Hello, how are you today? How is everything?" He would know that something was wrong. He would probably say something like, "Why are you talking this way? You don't sound like yourself." So you see, intonation brings your character, it builds up who you are. And then, of course, the question is, well, how do I do it? How do I create intonation? It's very simple. Just begin to hear it. Hear it around you, hear how people use it, and copy it. You know, the American TV show Friends, it was so powerful culturally that people here started changing their intonation so they could sound more like Joey or one of the other characters. It was quite striking. I can remember being at work when Friends was first broadcast and hearing all these British people with mannerisms and intonations of the characters. It really was strange. And of course, it's because it's how we all want to live. We all want people around us that we can completely trust. Because sadly, the reality is that we don't have that in our lives. So when we see it on TV, it becomes something that we immediately want to imitate. There's something very sad about that, but it does again show us the power of intonation. So if you're looking for a good example of intonation today, maybe you want to listen to Martin Luther King and his speech, "I Have a Dream," and just imagine what that would be like if there was no intonation. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to be so dramatic, simply watch a Cameron Diaz movie. It is her birthday, and listen to her intonation instead. It's going to be the same result, but not quite as dramatic. So, two things there that you could do: have a listen to intonation, and see how much of it you can copy. Great, great. Well, that's it from me today. I'll be back tomorrow with another podcast. I hope you found this helpful, and let's talk again soon. See you. Take care. Bye.